Yo, what's good, y'all? A good morning to everybody. I just decided to wake up and have this a small discussion. I've been ranting about a whole bunch of stuff, and yeah, this let's start a new drawing. I've ranted about a lot of stuff, a lot of my issues concerning um the tablet market and software updates and stuff like that. A lot of stuff. This I'm screen recording this on a Tab S3 for the benefit of anybody who wants to know, and I want to talk about why, damn it, Android tablets suck. Yeah, excuse my handwriting. So, why Android tablets suck? That's basically it. That's what we're gonna talk about for a little bit, just maybe 30 minutes or something, or a little bit less if I can. So while I talk, I'm just gonna sketch around. So first things first, I just made a statement. Some people are gonna be up in arms because some consumers just feel the need to justify whatever they spend their money on. They feel like you can't be objective. You cannot have divergent opinions when you buy something. If I spend my money on something, it should be worth it. I don't care what you believe in, what you prefer. I don't care if you like Apple more, if you like Samsung more. When it comes to phones, I'm a Samsung lover. Everybody knows that. This is a Tab S3. I'm highly frustrated with it though. Highly frustrated. And I have my Note 9. The reason why I'm frustrated is how OEMs treat tablets. They don't treat tablets They treat tablets worse than they treat phones. Why do I say that? Well, it's simple. They treat tablets worse than they treat their lineups. At least with flagship phones, you get some years of updates, maybe two at most. With most OEMs, if you're a Pixel user, you're gonna get somewhere in the ballpark of maybe somewhere in the ballpark of around 3 updates, 3 years of updates. Wow, this is super laggy today. With other tablets, other platforms, with Apple, you will get updates for around 5 years. It's not a guarantee, but that's usually how Apple does it. They don't even announce how many years they want to update their device for. If it has the specs to hold up another year, they will support it. When it comes to tablets, that's not the case. Unless, well, the Nexus, I think the Nexus 7 got quite some years of updates. They updated it for quite a bit of time. So for that, I think so. Somebody let me know how long they updated that for. And when it came to that, it made a little bit more. It makes a lot more sense because at the end of the day, tablets aren't they're supposed to be. They're marketed as. Let me just say that they're marketed as productivity devices. Why would I want to use a productivity device which is $600 for just 1 year? I already hate the fact that phones have a lifespan of just a lifespan of just around I think 2 years, some less, and that's deplorable. It's horrible. There should be a way for phones to be updated for a longer amount of time, and you have to realize that the software experience on a tablet is more or less more crucial in a certain way than it is on a phone. Not to say that it's not important on a phone. What I'm trying to say is on a tablet, the software is key because it it's a productivity device. It's something that you use because you're going to use it for something like work or something. And if the software starts acting up, then the whole experience is messed up, and therefore you can use it for the supposed productivity. A laggy phone depends on what you're using it for. If you're just making a call, like making calls and receiving text messages, well, then the lag doesn't really affect you that much unless you're somebody who's going through the UI and doing a whole bunch of stuff. So somebody like me who draws on their phone and their tablet needs to make sure that the software experience on both is optimal. But somebody who just uses their tablet for their phones for basic rudimentary things, I think that specs don't really matter too much to those people, to the average consumer. So far as it's just fast enough to do what they need. It shouldn't take too long to open an app. It shouldn't take too long to close certain things down or restart the device. Just basic stuff. And it should just have a good camera. A tablet, the camera doesn't matter that much because it's supposed to be a mini workstation ish kind of thing. You get what I mean? Whereas when it comes to phones, that's not the case. So when a person buys something like the Tab S3, they're probably buying it to draw or something, or they want to take notes with it. They want to make sure that they can do certain things that they can't do on their phone already, otherwise there wouldn't be a point of buying the tablet. So the annoying thing is, you buy something like a Tab S3, I think it came out in 2017 when the Note 8 came out, the S8 and the Note 8 came out with last gen hardware, and therefore made it actually weaker in a lot of respects than the flagship phones of that year, which makes no sense because it's supposed to, if it comes out in that year, then the ideology behind that, or what people might think you're trying to imply, is that it's supposed to do more than those flagship phones of that year. And it's not a mid-range, they're not marketing it as a mid-range product. They have the Tab E line for that, for mid-range. So this is supposed to be a high-end device that can do more. But for some reason, they give it the specs of a device from the previous year, which already had certain issues with respect to multitasking abilities and just general performance issues. So you put that in a larger device with a bigger screen, and then you market it as something that's going to help people do whatever, but it's just not that. So when it comes to tablets, updates, the lifespan of it and the specs of it just seem to be something that people just like that OEMs just don't take seriously enough. They just don't seem to take that serious. And that makes the whole experience of using tablet not, I don't know, like it makes it feel subpar. Sorry if I stutter a lot, because when I draw, I usually need to concentrate. So, another thing I want to talk about is how Apple handles their tablets. When it comes to Apple, Apple puts in a much more powerful processor than their Android counterparts. So much so that those processors that are in these new iPads are outperforming many computers. i7 processors. It blows them out of the water. Just the unfortunate problem is the software can't take full advantage of all of that power because of the simple fact of the platform that it runs and how much leeway they give the platform. So iOS can't do certain things that it just should be able to do in order to use all that power. If iOS had something like Dex, then that would be a different story altogether. But unfortunately, it doesn't have anything like Dex. It doesn't have a desktop environment that it can switch into, use drag and drop and all of that. Consequently, to when you go to the Android side, I'm talking mostly about Samsung, though it's supposed to be all about Android and all that though. But like when you look at the Android side of things with Samsung, you're putting last gen hardware in there. You're putting only 4 gigs of RAM. And unfortunately, a lot of people in the tech community have been led to believe that RAM for some reason does not matter. And anybody who knows anything about computers, I've said this in a lot of videos, knows that RAM is incredibly crucial to the performance of a device. It's not just there for show. It is incredibly crucial. Even a mobile device, even a phone needs enough RAM depending on what the platform is and how the platform is coded to run. You cannot run Android in the way most users want it to run nowadays with just 4 gigs of RAM. So if you blow that up and you look at a tablet, which is an environment that is supposed to be much more productive, meaning that odds are people are going to have more apps open. For God's sake, you have windowed apps. You have windowed apps on Samsung devices. So if I have windowed apps on a Samsung device and you give me 4 gigs of RAM, what are you trying to, what are you, how are you marketing this as a productivity device? How do you justify that? And then with the high price tag that you also slap us in the face with, how do you justify that? It makes no sense. If we're iOS, that's different, and even with that, I still believe that it still needs more than 4 gigs of RAM. At least 6 or 8 for their tablet makes sense. After you give it 6 or 8, you should make sure that you continue to update the software. You should make sure that, like, if it's a productivity device, I'm not gonna buy it and invest in it for just a short amount of time. And I want prompt updates no matter when I bought the friggin' thing. Just because you release a new device doesn't mean you should forget about the old devices. Unfortunately, with Samsung, they think that after they release a device, they're in the clear. As soon as the next device comes, they pretend as if the other device that they released the previous year isn't in need of an update. It doesn't need new features. And it does. Looking at, I took some screenshots last night. Unfortunately, that's on my other device. some screenshots of Geekbench performance differences between the Tab S4 and the Microsoft Surface Go, and this Tab S4 outperforms it in multi-core processing. So it's multi-core score, and in the single core score is virtually the same. They're both in the thousands. I think 1006 versus 1008. So that's 1600 versus 1800. And looking at it, right, that means that tablet has enough power to run some of the things that the Surface Go can run. Why aren't they not investing in developing applications that people would want to actually use? Let me stop this update thing, because you can see for yourself how janky and laggy this is. I had a comment on another video where somebody was saying install whatever. Let me just turn off Wi-Fi, and then that's the end of that. I'm tired. A device that costs this much shouldn't have that much lag. I use a Note 8 and Note 9 right now, but the Note 8 that I was using last year performed much better, even in drawing and painting, video editing, and everything that the tablet should be able to do better for years anyway. Than this tablet, it outperformed it. It did much better than this. Unfortunately, the drawback of that is that it's a phone, so the surface area of the screen is not going to ever outdo the surface area of this. The surface area of the screen is never going to outdo the surface area of the Tab S3. You can see exactly how laggy, very laggy the experience is. Sometimes the experience is faster, sometimes it's slower, but the experience is horrible. It is laggy. The only thing I can say is that it's okay for drawing, and that's why I've kept it for so long. I'm still looking for a replacement, but each replacement I look for, there are too many caveats. When it comes to the iPad Pro, I don't like Apple, but I'm considering it for what that tablet can do, the power it has. So I probably have a smoother experience, which I think is worth the money to an extent. But there's no file manager, and iOS is even way more limited than Android is in terms of just the flexibility of what you can do and what you can't do. And that's where iOS on the productivity side is it's a consumer-made device, made for the average consumer who wants an average experience. That's usually what they make and excel at as Apple. That's what they do. They don't make very flexible experiences unless you're on their desktop platform, which even with that, compared to Windows, which is also a lockdown system, I mean, it's not fully locked down, but it's relatively locked down compared to something like Android, which is way more open, or Linux, which is basically the same thing as Android anyway, but it's way more locked down. I mean, iOS is way more locked down, way too locked down for me to use it for what I use my devices for. The simple solution to most of this is just to make sure that you have I had an argument. I mean, I'm sorry for this segue though, but like I had an argument with somebody online a couple weeks ago where this person was talking. They keep talking about, because they watch a whole bunch of videos, and then a lot of reviewers are like software, 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 without realizing that hardware is what makes software flexible. It's what gives the software breathing room. Hardware is very important, just as important, even in a lot of ways more so than just software. So this dude's software, software, and software this and software that, and that the experience is 99% soft. Look, I told the guy, I asked the guy a simple question: are there hardware requirements for certain software? He couldn't answer the question. And the simple answer is yes, there is hardware requirements for any software, whether it's a game or whether it's an operating system, whether it's Photoshop, whether it's whatever. There are hardware requirements. Why do you think there are hardware requirements? It's a simple question. Because hardware matters. So when you open your mouth and start saying RAM doesn't matter and RAM doesn't affect the experience, and then later, years later, you realize, oh, it really does. All those years, you realize that all those years that Samsung had lag and all those issues, a lot of it could have been alleviated if they had added just a little bit more RAM and horsepower. Unfortunately, you have people who don't know what they're talking about telling people certain things, and then because of that, people start eating this stuff up, and then they start making all sorts of weird comments about things that they have no idea about. Things that don't make sense. Let me tell you, Chrome on Android is almost as power hungry as it is on desktop. When you're using Chrome on desktop, you can sometimes use as much as 16 gigs of RAM. I'm telling you. Chrome, which is a browser, which people who don't know anything would think, oh well, it doesn't take RAM, it's gonna make you need to have the horsepower or whatever. No, Chrome takes up a lot of resources, a lot of RAM. I keep saying this stuff in my videos because it gets annoying. It gets super annoying when people keep harping on RAM doesn't RAM is in smartphones is a gimmick. It really isn't. Anything that uses computing needs RAM. But I digress. So, the tablet market, for the prices that we're being charged for these tablets and what they offer, I don't think, when you think about it, I don't think any tablet is worth it when you look at just the price. I've tried video editing on this and it's not a good experience at all. I've had a better experience video editing on my Note 4. And I mean, the Note 4 has what? Snapdragon 8, what? It's not even an 810. So the 801 came out that same year, and it's the 805. Yeah, Snapdragon 805. So it has a Snapdragon 805. Unfortunately, it had only 3 gigs of RAM. Still wasn't enough. But it lagged less. Gave me less hiccups, just a little bit more restarts than this. And as you can tell, like, in recent years, restarts and refreshes have been reducing. What do you think that's attributed to? When you use a Note device like a Note 8 or a Note 9, refreshes, unless you have a problem with your device, are not super common. Even with a big device like this, that should be outperforming all of them. You find that refreshes are really common on this device. So somebody's gonna say, like, okay, you've talked about how problematic the device is, what do you think they should do? And this is what I really think. I think that first and foremost, they need to make sure that they keep their phones, their tablets up to date. All OEMs. They need to invest in software that can take advantage of the larger form factor. That means they need to make sure that more of these apps are optimized for this platform. After that, they need to make sure that the hardware is capable of running the software smoothly, not just for now, but also for the future. You need to make, at the very least, there should be 3 years of updates for this. How long do people use their laptops for? The longest I've used a laptop for is like 5 years. That means, and I still have that laptop, but it's just not with me, it's with somebody else now. Meaning that somebody else is using that laptop as their primary computing device. And it's still getting updates. It's still a Windows device that's still getting updates. Meanwhile, this device is priced above a lot of computers that are gonna get updates for years, yet it only will probably get another year of updates and then it's dead. It makes no sense. And the hardware is subpar. At least, at the very least, it should have had the same specs of the Note device of the same year. At the very least. Samsung also manufactures their own chips. Why not take advantage of that? Create a chip as powerful as what Apple is putting in their tablets, and put it inside of your own Android device. And then make a promise that you're gonna at least update the software for 3 years. It's not that hard. For the amount of money you're trying to take from people, within those 3 years, you cater the experience the way you want. If Android apps are optimized for the platform for tablets, then the smartest thing to do is to start making use of your own store, which they have. They have their own store, so you start taking advantage of that. Optimize it for your own platform, and then you create your own ecosystem, which you've been trying to do for years. What if you only support a device for a year and a half or 2 years? How do you expect to develop your own platform and compete against their main competitor, which is Apple, which is supporting devices? It's even offering repairs for iOS devices like the iPhone 4S. In retro, I think that's a 2012, 2013 device. Imagine that. What about the S3 or the Note 2? Those devices all should still, at the very least, have an Android update. If people still buy them, aren't you still making money? Won't you spend less money in the future? Because those are still viable options. They still work. People still use those devices. You can still find them out in the wild. Unfortunately, Samsung's approach to how they handle software, and then how they and how older devices get treated over time, is just horrible. When I had my Note 4, I had to when I had my Note 4, I kept waiting and hoping that at least the friggin' theme store would come to that device, so at least the software would at least be looking fresh a little bit. But that never happened, though it had the hardware that was capable of doing it. How do I know this? Because In that same year, mid-range and low-range devices came out with specs which were far weaker, with specs comparable to the Galaxy S3 came out. Those devices came out, and they were running what's called the new Samsung experience, no problem. Meanwhile, my device was still more expensive than those devices were. Samsung needs to learn how to cater to those who buy their devices, and those who are aware that the specs of their devices. Keep taking people for granted. This device right here, it could benefit from so much more if they would just friggin' like show some respect to some of us, but unfortunately that's not the case. Yeah, it's been 31 minutes, still ranting. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make part 2 of this video, and after that I'll upload it. Unfortunately, for those who probably got annoyed at the fact that I keep taking time to pause, it's because I'm drawing at the same time. Unfortunately, this drawing didn't come out the way I wish it would, but it's just a random drawing. I'll try and see if I can finish it. Probably can. Alright, so I'll see you guys in the next one.